Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Portland Art Museum's Brown Bag Lecture. I am so glad to see all your smiling faces. We were a little worried about people coming out the week before Christmas, so thank you very much for coming. My name is Ray Bittigan. I'm the president of the Photography Council here at the Portland Art Museum, and I'm excited because this Brown Bag series is one of the most visible, sort of important things that we do at the Photography Council. Our main job is raising money, and that's less sort of glamorous than it is looking at everybody else's photographs. But if you'd like to contribute to the Photography Council and help the museum buy prints, consider a membership. George is at the back of the room, and he'll sign you up, and you get to do some interesting things with us, including feeling good about yourself for supporting the Photography Council. These lectures are sponsored by a local camera store called Pro Photo Supply. If you don't know it, I recommend it. They have everything you could possibly hope for having and more. So please shop there when you can. They've sponsored this for as long as I can remember, and I've been doing this for kind of a long time. Today I'm excited because we have Ryan Gillespie here to show you his work. And I first met him when he was learning tintype photography at New Space. He then soon took up platinum printing, which has warmed to my heart. And he also is a landscape photographer. And I know that a lot of you are interested in landscape photography. So I think we're in for a good day today. So please help me welcome Ryan Gillespie.
Thanks so much for coming out. I was very comfortable talking to some of you back there with some of my prints and stuff, but now that I'm up here in a much larger group, my heart is just pounding, and we'll see just how well we get through this. First off, I was very surprised to get this invitation from the Photography Council, and I'm very grateful for them giving me this opportunity. It helps me personally grow and just gives me an opportunity to share my love and my passion with the community. It's really amazing that we have the museum that even gives us this space to be able to do this thing. I've lived in a lot of different cities growing up and throughout my life. And Portland and this area, we're so lucky as photographers and as artists. This is a very unique community. And the way that we support one another, share information, share our talents, share our passions with one another, I really haven't seen that anywhere else. And so thank you to each and every one of you to keep that spirit alive in sharing your passions with one another, including myself. There's some familiar faces out there that have shared so much with me in the last handful of years that I've been here, and grateful to each one of you. I find myself now kind of passing the torch as people approach me to kind of share information. And I think that's what it's all about, is paying it forward and keeping the art and passion alive. We'll see how technology works here with us. My name's Ryan Gillespie, and I also on social media I go by the name of Gillespie. And the reason for that is growing up as a child, for some reason kids, they really couldn't pronounce Gillespie for some reason. And it was always, hey Gillespie, what's up Gillespie? How's it going Gillespie? When it came time for me to kind of put my work together and to put a website together, I realized that Ryan Gillespie was not a really unique name. Every aspect of ryangillespie.com or .org was already taken. So I had to sit there and think, how am I going to put my name out there? And of course at that point I said, I guess it's going to be Gillespie. It's kind of a little, rolls off the tongue a little better than Gillespie maybe. And so we'll kind of talk about that here a little bit later. Everything kind of started for me back in the early 90s. I needed an extra credit for my high school class, and my counselor told me that I probably ought to take the photography course. I grew up in an awesome community in southern Denver, and the high school was huge. I think we had 4,000 or 5,000 students. It was more like a small community college, and our photography program there was just top-notch. And I remember going into the class the first day. Mr. Koloff was his name. This guy, He had salt and pepper hair that was down to about mid-back, pulled into a ponytail. He wore members-only jackets and tight jeans before skinny jeans were cool, and cowboy boots. And he was so different and so unique, and I thought, man, this guy's got something cool to share. I could just see it. And he started passing out the K1000, the Pentex K1000. Anyone who's ever had this, who started with a Pentex K1000, right? Yeah, exactly. The Pentex K1000, that's like the gateway drug to photography. I mean, they were passing that stuff out like candy. There's a meme out there that actually says, if you teach your kids photography, they'll never have enough money in their lives to buy drugs. And it's so true. And it all starts with this camera right here. I fell in love with the darkroom and the darkroom process. I kind of get emotional about it because this little room really is what changed my life. That's what really taught me what passion and love is all about. I learned so many things under the dim light of the red safe light. And Mr. Koloff, he taught us so many things. He didn't limit us in our photography, or he didn't limit us in the type of work that we wanted to do. He said, just be creative and let it go. I did all sorts of weird film manipulation and things, and started kind of winning some awards as a high school student. I later went to college and was kind of doing the same thing, and my college professor in photography kind of looked at some of the same type of work and he said, that's not photography. I remember calling up my dad and saying, this isn't the school I want to go to. And so I dropped out and moved on to do other things. But the darkroom has always been a passion in my life, and I'll never forget about it. Some of my early influencers are Carlton Watkins. Anyone who knows his work, and in fact I think he has some stuff here at the Art Museum for a while. He was photographing the Columbia River Gorge before you could have easy access to it. It was by horseback, it was by boat, it was by rail. And some of his work was done on colloidal wet plate, mammoth plates that were like 18 and 22 inches wide. And they were just gorgeous, they were pristine. And it still blows me away to this day, after doing some wet plate work, wondering how he could do that big of images so beautifully. And his compositions were incredible. Some of my inspiration of how I do my own compositions come from Watkins. John Sexton, an amazing black and white printer in the darkroom. He had the privilege of working with Ansel Adams. And I look at his work and he just, in fact, this image right here of a fallen roof, I saw this back in around the year 2000 in his book, Places of Power. And as soon as I saw that image there, it inspired me that I wanted to go see that place for myself. I had to experience fallen roof for myself. It was only 16 years later that I finally had the opportunity to do so, and I captured it. And this may be sacrilegious from John Sexton to say, but I kind of like my image better. My other major influencer, my last, is Michael Fatale. I was living in southern Utah at the time when I met Michael Fatale. I actually had a portrait studio in southern Utah. And kind of during low times of the studio, I would head out to Zion National Park where Michael had his gallery and his production facility. And I'd frame his images for him. And every now and then he'd call me up and say, hey, do you want to go out hiking through the Narrows with me or something? And the first time I saw Michael's work, I was blown away. He's got these beautiful 30 by 40, 40 by 60 Cibachrome prints that just had so much life and color to them. If anyone knows of Michael Fatale's work, if you ever see it, you'll realize too that Michael doesn't use filters. Everything that you see in his images is just true natural light of what was occurring at that time. And I learned so much from him about the way he photographed. But I had never seen images like his. When you stand in front of them, they were just so crisp and clean, and the detail was immaculate. And I realized It was the equipment that he was using. He was using 8x10 at the time. So when this is my early portrait work, this is what I was doing at the time. And this was right at the point where digital was kind of starting to take over in the industry. And I'm going to preface saying I'm not anti-digital by any means. I use it in certain ways now and then. But at the point, I kind of got sick to my stomach about this period of time because clients all over the place were no longer looking at professional photographers for their value of their photography and their skills. They're like, oh, well, my Aunt Jane's got a digital camera and she can do this for me at lower cost. And I kept hearing that all over. And everyone just thought that, well, I've got a digital camera now, so I can just do it. I can shoot as many pictures as I want, which is true. But I think you still need to have an eye on things, and that's a whole other story. But I got to the point where it was so tough and so sad that I ended up closing up the studio and I sold off all of my equipment. And I never touched a camera again for more than 10 years. I've been here for about 5 years. And at that time I was kind of a couch potato. I was living my life through the eyes of other people that I knew on social media through their work. I'd given up photography as far as me going out and capturing it, but I never really gave up photography as far as my love for viewing it. And I found all sorts of people, maybe some in this room right now, that I was following on social media. And about that same time, my boys came to me one night. I kind of forget what we were talking about, but I remember the question came up, and we were talking about film for some reason, and they looked at me and they said, "Dad, what's film?" And I sat there and I thought, man, you guys have no clue what cool thing film is and what it can do. I realized at that point the only thing that they had known about capturing images was with a push of a button on their cell phone. So I got an Olympus camera. Well, that was kind of one that I used after the K1000, as well as I'd also found a 6x12 pinhole camera. And right at that same time, I came across this movie called The Art of Flight. And in it, the quote says, "Our lives have become digital, our friends are now virtual, and everything you could ever want to know is just a click away. Experiencing the world through endless second-hand information isn't enough. If we want authenticity, then we have to initiate it." And that hit me in the gut, because I knew that I'd been living my life through all this second-hand experiences, and I needed to get out and experience life myself. So I grabbed the new film camera, and I grabbed the 6x12 pinhole camera, and I went the pinhole route because I remember in my early days in art school, I'd done some pinhole work. This was one of my early pinhole works, which that was done from a 4x5 pinhole. And some people look at it and they're just like, no way is that a pinhole, because the clarity on it is just impeccable, and I agree. It was an amazing little camera. I still have it and bring it out every now and then. But with pinholes, pinhole was fun because you're going back to just the raw basics of photography. You got just a box, a hole, and you can't see through it. You just kind of aim it and hope for the best. And it was just so much joy to go out and about and experience the world, not only in person, but then to come back and relive it through the eyes of these pinholes. The pinhole camera was made from a company named Ondu. I don't know if any of you know the Ondu pinhole company. But I would just get in the car with my boys and we would just start visiting all sorts of places. I'd even take the camera with me when I would travel for work. I used to travel a lot for work. I'd be gone for weeks, constantly, almost every week I'd be out somewhere. And I'd take the pinhole camera with me. This is up north in Mukilteo Lighthouse. And I'd get up early in the morning before I had to go make appointments, and I'd go out pinholing for a little while and capture some images before I'd have to be, quote unquote, at work at some of my clients. And I even would find times where after work, instead of going back to a hotel room and just watching TV or something, I'd go back out and I'd go explore the areas around me. to a point though where the pinhole wasn't enough for me. In the back of my mind, I kept thinking about Michael Fatale's images and how crisp and clear that these images were. And I approached my wife one day and I said, if I'm going to really do this serious again, because at this point, the drug addiction came in, right? It was the K1000s coming back into my mind, and I caught the bug, I caught the addiction, and I wanted to get back to doing quote-unquote real photography again. And I said, I need to go big. And I originally started out with a 4x5 film camera, and in just the last year and a half, I went up a little bit bigger to the 8x10, and that's really my only camera right now. I don't really photograph with anything else. That goes in my car, and it's with me whenever I possibly can. It is awkward at times, but it's not like I can get out on the side of the, well, no, I'm not going to say that because I do get out on the side of the road and take pictures. But it's not quick to set up and photograph. I found that by utilizing large format photography, that joy and that passion came back into my life. There was a brief moment where I was doing some digital photography, but I realized that I'd take images and they'd get thrown onto my hard drive and then I'd completely forget about it. And it's kind of the same way with social media. We throw up our images or our work on social media, and it's cool for about a day or two, and then all of a sudden it just gets lost behind everybody else's posts. And so I also then realized that I needed to maybe do something different than just go out and photograph. I know some of you in here are very technical with photography. You're going to know exactly all the little ins and outs that I'm talking about. You probably even know more than I do. And then there's some in this room that I know that have come out that are just in appreciation of me and my work that may not know the technicalities of photography. So I kind of share a few things with each of you. What you're looking at is I'm going to go through a little bit of size comparison of the different formats that are available. The little blue square there is an APS digital sensor and an APS camera. You then move up to a full frame camera equivalent to 35 millimeter. Next up from there, you're kind of into the medium format range, which at that point you're at a 6x6 or a 6x7 centimeter negative. Whether it's a negative or a digital camera, a sensor, I kind of look at them as the same. They're all sensors to light, right? And so I kind of refer to these all as size of the sensor, whether it be film or digital. After medium format, you jump into 4x5 negatives. These are all in exact size comparison to one another. And then of course, the white screen that you've been looking at is the size of an 8x10 negative. So the amount of detail that you can capture with an 8x10 in comparison to the other formats is just incredible. And for me, that's why I photograph. I love doing landscapes, and I love seeing the small little details in the landscape. To me, that's what brings me joy. That's what gets me giggling. A couple of you were looking at my images back there, and you were looking at some of the little intricate details that are in the prints. And that's when those come up out of the developer, I sit there and giggle as this little school kid because they're just amazing at the detail that you can see. And I didn't really notice that when I was doing medium format film, when I was doing portraiture and stuff. To give you another idea of kind of what I see when I'm working with my camera, this would be a traditional view per se of looking at a scene. You've got a full frame, it's nice and bright. You see it for true, things are upright, they're exactly how you would see it in the world. When you look through a traditional viewfinder of a camera, you're actually looking at the image, you snap, you might see a black for a few seconds or half a second when the shutter releases, right? And then when it opens back up again, you're looking back out at the image. My view under my camera looks something more like this. It's the exact same image, but for me, when I'm under the dark cloth looking at the back of my camera on a piece of ground glass, everything is upside down and backwards. And it's dark, because usually I don't have a whole lot of light coming through my lens at that point. And what's really strange is when I'm looking at these images upside down and backwards on my ground glass, they make perfect sense to me. I actually struggle when I go to look through a traditional viewfinder of a traditional camera. To me, it's more difficult for me to compose with than it is for me to look through the ground glass of my large format camera. Edward West has one of the greatest quotes, and I actually live by this quote. It says, anything more than 500 yards isn't photogenic. For me, I take that literally. When you're carrying around 60 or 70 pounds of gear, you really don't want to hike more than a mile to go capture an image. And so the way I photograph is literally that. If I can find something that's 500 yards or less from my car, the happier I am as a photographer. Seattle skyline, this is from the Gasworks Park. I didn't have to walk far. I travel with my large format gear, which is kind of weird because, like I say, it's heavy, it's cumbersome, there's a lot to it. The strangest thing is when you walk through security at the airport with an old folding wooden camera, and they ask you, how do you turn it on? And I said, it doesn't turn on. They're like, well, where's the battery? Well, there's no battery. And then they're like, well, what is this? And I can see they're a little concerned. Like, what is this wood box that you're trying to carry on the airplane? But again, like I say, I didn't like to just sit around in a hotel room after my daily work, so I'd get out and about and go explore. This was in Utah, looking out in the west desert of Utah. And the other thing that I see when I photograph is the sky. Like when I'm driving my car in the day, I see just a small band of land and trees and stuff, and the rest is just the sky. And I love the sky. I love what the clouds can do. And anytime I see some gray clouds, I go out and I capture it. I'll make comments on some of these images because it's kind of sad because the projector doesn't really do justice, but like if you look at this on my website or on screen, again, the thing I love is there's like these little power lines that cut across the desert floor, and you can literally see the power line cutting across the desert floor. And it's the little nuances that the film picks up that just blows my mind. My influences of John Sexton. While I was in Utah, I went down to the Colorado Plateau and hiked into House on Fire here. That was the easy hike. It was later that same day when I finally got my way back, like I said, 16 years later when I got to Fallen Roof. Has anyone been to Fallen Roof? Yeah. It's a heck of a hike. After experiencing House on Fire is just kind of barely up on a little hill. So in my mind I thought, well, this is just going to be up on a little hill. So I hiked down, I think it's around maybe 2-3 mile hike. Again, I got my 70 pounds of gear on. It's hot. It was kind of a dangerous situation because I realized when I checked in at the trailhead, they have little stands that you check in with. The last person to have checked in was about 6 weeks prior to me being there, and I was there alone. And it was a little nerve-wracking. But you get down to Fallen Roof, and I kind of knew like I was in the spot, and I'm looking around thinking that it's just here or there, and then all of a sudden it's up there. And it's not really a cliff, but it's some steep slick rock that you kind of have to go back and forth on. And I got up to the top to photograph this, and it took me about 45 minutes just to catch my breath back and to get set up. But it's kind of weird. You're sitting there in this area, and you almost feel like a little face or something's going to pop out of those windows at any moment. And it's kind of to me, it's a spiritual place. Before leaving, I actually turned back and said, thanks for letting me spend some time with you, because you feel like you're not alone. Point Reyes, California. I was down at Point Reyes before I actually came across an incredible photographer who's here today, Austin Granger. He has some amazing work of Point Reyes, California. And Point Reyes is another one of those places on earth that is just spiritual. I was there at like 5:30 a.m. again before I had to go do some work that day, and I just never felt like I was ever alone. It was incredible. It was me and a herd of deer. And when I went down, I could see this view. You're kind of up on a cliff, and I could see this view looking out, and it was just incredible how it went out into infinity. You can never see the end of it. And as I was hiking down, I saw the female deer and the littler deer kind of up on the cliff behind me a little bit. And as I walked down to where I wanted to take this picture from, I came face to face with a buck who was laying and we both had this deer in the headlight look of, what the hell are you doing here? And wondering who's going to make the next move, and is this going to be a dangerous move? Am I going to be okay? And I just kind of talked to him for a second, and I said, I really want to be here, and I think you need to leave. And I think he heard me, because he popped up, and then he trotted off away, and I was able to get the shot that I wanted. The other aspect I love about photography is just that. The stories or the adventures that come behind the scenes. The things that happen to you in life as you're trying to capture these moments that you want to experience. I initially went to Point Reyes because they have this really cool lighthouse, and I wanted to go photograph the lighthouse. I never got a picture of the lighthouse because I came across this scene instead. You see, with large format photography, I only carry with me about 4 or 6 sheets of film at a time. I don't have the luxury of clicking away 100 images and hoping that one of them is going to be turned out right. I got to be very selective of what I am that I want to capture. When I came across this scene, there's actually kind of like a big water tower or something kind of in the background, and it was just ugly. But I knew the composition in the image there had something to give, and I thought it was cool. I sat there for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and I relived it a couple times and looked at it at different angles, and nothing worked. And this big water tank was still in the back, and I decided it's just not going to happen today. So I started walking back to my car, because this was in walking distance of my car. And I kind of just said, man, where did that fog come? Where did it go? I just need some fog. If I could just get some fog, then it would blur out the big water tower, and I think I'd have the image that I need. I took a look back over my shoulder just as I finished saying that, and all of a sudden you just saw all this fog rolling in up the coast. 70 pounds on my gear, but I'm running back up the hill to get set up because I didn't know how long the fog was going to last, but I was able to click off 2 images on that one and captured what I was hoping for. Berger Photographic it's the last French company that produces film and photographic papers. A couple years ago, they were trying to redo their products, and they asked for people to submit some work for them to put on their product line. And I was amazed and stunned that they chose that last image to put on their photographic papers. I'll be honest with you, I really don't like their films. Their paper, though, for anyone who prints in the darkroom, it's amazing paper. It's beautiful paper, so I'll give them that. I know a lot of photographers that especially do landscape, it's like they're always waiting for just that perfect moment when the light's just right. There's no wind. They don't want any movement. They want to just capture it in this pristine way. To me, you just capture what's going on. If you look up in the top, you can see this is on a pretty windy day. Just capture the image. Share it the way that you are experiencing it. And I would hope that the viewer of this would realize that it wasn't a calm, perfect day. I mean, this was actually, I think, 10:30 at night in Scotland. I wasn't ready to go to bed. The light was still out, so I might as well be out photographing as well. And it was windy, but I wanted to capture the moment for what I saw. I spent some time in Scotland because my ancestors are from Scotland. And in Scotland, the wind always blows. And when you have a large camera, it ends up being a large sail. And it catches every little movement of the wind. This was early morning. It was 30-mile-an-hour winds coming right up into my face off the ocean. I was there. I took a picture because I knew I may never be there again. And I crossed my fingers and walked away thinking, I hope there's something, but I guarantee you with 30-mile-an-hour winds, it's going to be out of focus or it's going to have movement. I processed it, and to my amazement, it was sharp. I have a 30 by 40 print of that in my house, and again, the details are just immaculate. Nice point. Same thing, I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. I actually had to walk like this into the wind for about a mile to get on the edge of the cliff to grab this image, and I'm bucking the winds again, almost blowing all my gear off. But I was there, and I needed to capture it, and somehow it stayed sharp. When I was walking back to my car, because that's how I photograph, I don't go far from my car, the biggest Winnebago on the Isle of Skye ended up being in the parking lot next to my car, just as I looked down to the south and saw this view. And it was just one of those moments where I think God was looking out for me. He knew I wanted at least one really nice, sharp image, and put this Winnebago right there for me to block the wind, just long enough for me to capture a couple of exposures. This is another one that really kind of doesn't do it justice. Every so often you see these little waterfalls that are coming off the cliffs there into the ocean. I just love it. This is in Elgal. I kind of was experimenting with some longer shutter speeds there as the ocean, as the water was coming in. Kind of like it. Locked on vegan. And again, I don't walk far from my car. Black Rock Cottage. I share Scotland with you because in Scotland, everything is built of stone. My third and fourth great-grandfathers were stonemasons from Scotland. And when you go back to Scotland and you see these buildings that are all built out of stone, if you look really close, each stone has the stonemaker's mark who cut it. And what I would give today to have a stone that was cut by the hands of one of my great-grandfathers. And that got me thinking. I don't have much to leave behind when I'm gone from this earth, but I hope my family that comes behind me will know of my love and passion for photography, and that I can leave them something behind. I'll talk about it a little bit later, but that process that I found was through platinum and palladium printing, a printing process that will last for hundreds of years. I've recently fallen in love with the 4x10 format. The beauty of working with a large format camera like an 8x10 is you can get film holders or reducing backs for 4x10, 5x7, 4x5. It's kind of a multi-tool, and you're not really limited to just one format. You never know what's going to be around the next turn. Another area that I love to go photograph is out east in the Palouse. You can't really see the horizon because you're always riding in these roads that are down in these valleys of these little rolling hills, and you literally never know what you're going to see coming around the next bend. This is one of those moments where I'm going 65 miles an hour down the road and I see this cool, weird composition out of the corner of my eye. This one got me giddy because I knew exactly how this finished image was going to look. I just had to do a U-turn to get back there fast enough for the light to last. I set up my camera and I could just see just these beautiful rays of light coming in and out of the rolling hills. Clicked off a couple images and then walked away. And this one still gets me. I just love how I was just at the right place at the right time. And it's weird because as I'm driving down the road, I do that a lot where I'm doing 65 and I see something, and sometimes you just say, "No, I'll get it next time." But you start to learn that there is no next time. The beauty of photography for all of us is that we're capturing these moments in like 1/60th of a second or 1/500th of a second. a fleeting moment that will never be that exact same way again, ever. We never can recreate that moment the exact same way. Nature just won't let that happen. And so, if there's one thing that I could leave with you today, it's don't just keep driving by, don't keep passing by. There won't be a next time. Take the moment in your life and experience that moment right now. This is a really cool story. I was out at the Columbia River Gorge after a summer of drought, and I went out to Cape Horn. I like to go up there a lot, and I watched the storm come through with the rays of light shining through the rain cloud. The next day, I was reading in an article how I hope I pronounced this right, but the Clackatat tribe, the day before, had actually done a rain dance. And I thought that's pretty cool. We've gone through drought, and I just happened to be up there on the one day when the rain decided to come. A photographer once told me that you gotta have something in the sky to make a photograph worthwhile. I don't believe that. The world that I live in, there's not always a cloud in the sky, but the beautiful blues. Sometimes less is more. Kind of hit through some of these because I know I'm a little bit short on time. Columbia River wetlands. Again, the Columbia River. It's one of my favorites as far as the lighting effect that I captured that day. Things just, again, right time, right place, the right light. Skylight Cave down in Central Oregon. I took my boys and a friend of mine who also photographs. We went down to see this. This is one of those things that you gotta go see for yourself. Not just to photograph it, but just to experience it. To me, again, it was just an amazing spiritual experience. We sat in this cave when it was pretty much black, and we just kind of watched as these rays of light slowly made their way down the wall of the cave and then into the position that you see in my image. I had to be ready for that moment when the light was right. I'm photographing on a ground glass, and in pitch darkness, I can't focus. I can't see anything. Modern technology allows us to have autofocus with digital cameras, and you can kind of hit a point and know where you're going to be, but I didn't have that luxury. I saw just a glimmer of light starting to come through one of the top lights, and that's when I just kind of saw the speck of light, and that's what I focused on. And again, I just crossed my fingers and hoped for the best. Lower Lewis River Falls. This is one of those things. I'm not just about landscape as far as landscape and the environment. In my landscape where I live, there's things that man puts there. And that, to me, is also landscape. I see things a lot that in my mind I think, I need to capture that because it's not going to be here long. I used to pass this for about a year near my home. And sure enough, I had this idea one day that I don't think that's going to be here much longer. But I like the way it looks, so I went and captured it. The next weekend, it was completely bulldozed. This is appropriate for this time of year. This is a view from Little Blitzen looking over Christmas Valley. Again, the light was just right. This is one of those with my friend. It was like, do we stop? Yeah, we stop. Hit the brakes. The dust cloud comes flying past us as we're setting up our equipment. I've been working a little bit with X-ray film. It's kind of interesting. This is not a snow scene by any means. It's X-ray film. X-ray sees light differently than traditional film, and it's been kind of fun to work with. This was in the springtime, actually, and that's just brown dirt where you see that it's all white. One of my favorite images. The way the film reads, also, the tree branches as they go up, they kind of disappear. I have a print of that in the back. You'll notice in the print that the tree branches just kind of disappear like veins under your skin. I always travel with my boys as much as I can, and they go with me. It's our time that we can be together. We were in the back roads of the Cascade Mountains, and my boys from the back seat were yelling, "Dad, the fog! Get the fog, Dad!" Just as the fog was starting to roll down the hill. So I jump out, I set up my gear, and my oldest grabbed the umbrella because it was actually starting to hail, I think. And there's our capture of the fog, Dad. The Thick of Things, Redwood Forest. There's a great print of this in the back. Definitely check it out. the detail in this image it makes me giddy. This is one that I wish was still back there. This one here, I actually just had to send it down to a gallery down in Texas for a showing next month. The Boardman Farms, as many of you know, really don't exist out there anymore. Like I say, stop, capture that moment, because you never know when it's going to be gone. I always have these little voices. I'll be looking at a scene and I'll grab a couple images, and then all of a sudden I'll look somewhere else, and then this voice comes in my head and it says, "There's your shot." And that happens so often with me. It's like, yeah, that's your shot. And that's exactly what I was focused on. Something. I almost wasted all my film on something completely different that looked like garbage. And I had 2 sheets of film left and saw this and said, yeah, that's your image. And then I sat there for 3 hours waiting for just the right light. I've been going with another friend of mine up into the Gifford-Pinchot National Forest. It's only about, 10 minutes from where we live. This grove of trees, man, you could just hear your voice echoing down in them. Ridgefield, Washington, X-ray film. This is on the way out to Warm Springs. I love that area out there. There's so many things that you can sit and photograph. You can spend a year out there. Again, right off the freeway, the right place, the right time, the right light. More from Boardman. Gifford-Pinchot. Bandon. The right place, the right light. More from Bandon. Devil's Kitchen. Bandon. This is one of the few images I grabbed where there's actually people in it. I just liked it because the people gave perspective as to the size of the whole scene. We're really just small grains of sands on this earth. View from Ecola, departing storm. The title of this one's called Separated at Birth. I don't know, every time I see it, I'm thinking these guys at some point were joined together on the same landmass, but now they're just kind of separated out there on the ebb tide. The right light, just looking. Dead Man's Cove, I know it's been photographed thousands of times, and that's okay. It's okay to go out to places that have been photographed thousands of times by other photographers. It's really about enjoying the moment and the location. I had this place for myself for about 3 hours. Just me and a sea otter that just kept popping his head up, checking out what I was doing. Arcadia Beach. This one here was a 22-minute exposure. This one here, I didn't want, the beach was full of people, and I didn't want the people in my picture on this one. With film, some of you know this and some of you don't, but with film, there's a thing called reciprocity failure. And what that is film is set to accept a certain amount of light to be exposed properly. And when that film doesn't have enough light to expose properly, it goes into reciprocity failure. And so you have to overextend your exposure to compensate for the lack of light that the film is getting so that your film is exposed properly. So I put on a neutral density filter for this so that I could get the people blurred out, but by the time I ended up having to go down to f45, which is a whole other story, to capture the depth to this image, I ended up having to calculate this out to about 22 minutes. And luckily, during the exposure, a lady and her dog came by and we sat and talked about the camera and about life and about dogs for 22 minutes. And again, those are the moments. I go to this beach a lot on the Oregon coast, and I've never seen it look like that before, and I've never seen it look like that since. I call that one Cocoon. It reminds me of Cocoon, the movie, if any of you remember that. I truly believe that an image only becomes a photograph after it's been printed. And I think in closing, I'll leave you with this little video that I've done a little bit ago about my photographic printing process, which is platinum palladium. And we'll maybe end on that for questions. But in the back of the room on a table are some of my images that I brought with me today. And I brought them for you to actually hand hold, like pick them up, look at them, breathe on them, it's okay. That's what they're printed for, it's for the enjoyment of the viewer. Yeah, put down your coffee and put that somewhere else, but it's okay to breathe on those prints. This is my production of making the print, the thicket.
I never wanted to say I never wanted to say goodbye. I never wanted to say goodbye. As much is true, the bet's on you to lose. Leg in Appleland, amused. Oh, don't you be, don't you be, don't you be, don't you be, oh no, alone. Oh, don't you be, don't you be, don't you be, don't you be, oh no, alone. You gotta take it in stride. You gotta take it and try. Get it, take it and go. Never really know. As much is true, bet's on you to lose. It's tooth and nail, a map and a muse. Is it too late? Is it too late? Is it too late? Is it too late? Is it too late for you? Now is it too late? Is it too late? Is it too late? Is it too late? Is it too late for me? Don't you be, don't you be, don't you be. I never wanted to say, don't you be, oh no, alone. I never wanted to say, don't you be, don't you be, don't you be. I never wanted to say, don't you be, oh no, alone. I never wanted to say goodbye.
The difference between the images that you just see online versus what you hold in your hand, you'll know that it's a handmade print when you see the brush strokes. The one thing that I love about platinum palladium printing is not only do you have depth in them that you really don't see from an inkjet print or a dark traditional silver gelatin print, the tonality of them is quite different and quite unique and beautiful. But because each one is hand-coded, each one is slightly different from the next. I can't really replicate the same image over and over. Yeah, they look the same, but they're not exactly the same. So there's just a couple of images there, scans from the prints, but I would definitely take a moment and look at them on the back table. Again, thank you so much for coming and sharing a moment with me as I share these views from my ground glass, and I'm grateful that you all were able to take a moment out of your day to be with me at this, so thank you.